Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rosales Media for Change podcast. I'm your host, Miguel Rosales, and today I'm talking with Dr. Galasso, an ER doctor who knew she wanted to work in emergency medicine since freshman year of high school. After 11 years of school and training, she's now living that dream. Today we talk about the challenges of med school, passing the MCAT, the best parts of working in the ER, and even how accurate emergency room TV shows really are, plus her personal connection to them. Let's jump in. Just for a little background, could you run me through what you do on a day-to-day basis, what your career is, and yeah, sort of what you do?
So I am an emergency medicine physician, meaning I work in the ER as a doctor. I split my time between both the emergency room and an urgent care in the community. So I basically do shift work. I work about 10-hour shifts on average, seeing patients for the entire shift. And I guess we can go into how I got there in the further questions. But yeah, so that's basically what I'm doing right now in San Diego, working in the ER and urgent care.
Got it. And that's the job that you currently have now. So kind of to start aiming into the direction of how you got there, what other jobs have you done, or I guess bigger roles have you had that led up to you working in the ER?
So it pretty much started with schooling, and I went kind of straight through. So decided I wanted to take this path when I was in high school, and then I got my bachelor's, so 4 years of college, then med school for 4 years, and then there was a 3-year residency after that, which was how I got my training specifically in emergency medicine, working in the emergency room. Um, Residency, like I said, was 3 years. I did that in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I had kind of a few different roles throughout that, but mostly it was training for training purposes. And then after residency, I was done with training, finally graduated and ready to be out on my own. At that point, I kind of could go anywhere I wanted to. So I decided I wanted to make a move across the country and ended up on the West Coast, applied for jobs. And currently I'm working with Kaiser in the ER. That was my first job that I got when I moved out here.
God, that's really cool. And it sounds like a really long journey of a lot of
Yes.
schooling. And I think one of the biggest questions that a lot of high school students and especially college students ask themselves when it comes to being in the medical field is, do you think it's worth it for or rewarding having gone through all that schooling to have the career that you have now?
Yes, and that's a very good question because I get asked that a lot by different people, and I've tried to mentor, help younger people out in the past, including family members and friends. And I still think it's worth it. And not everyone will say that, like all my colleagues and people that I work with, because there are definitely some maybe negative aspects to the job, even more recently with kind of like the political climate and insurance companies and things like that. But um, I personally think it's worth it. Yes, it was a long road. But now being where I'm at with finally having done my training and being out on my own and really practicing and being able to help people, I do think it's worth it. And some of the reasons are that every day I'm, helping patients who need it. A lot of people that go to the ER, it's one of with their worst days. They have an issue that they think could be life threatening. And um, I feel like I have the training, even though it was many years, but I have the training to be able to help them and actually do something good for them and make an impact.
Yeah, I really like that. And so you mentioned how you knew you wanted to go into the medical field and likely into the ER since high school. So what was that like back in high school? Were you already taking classes that you knew would benefit you for college and beyond, or what sort of things were you doing back in high school that helped you go into the medical field?
Yes. So I was more drawn to the sciences in high school. Biology was one of my favorite classes. So that was like freshman year of high school where I kind of had the feeling that that's what I wanted to do. Um, and to be honest, another thing that kind of led me on this path was a show that I really liked back then, which was ER. Um, and even though TV shows and stuff like that are very dramatized, I feel like my career still reminds me of those reasons why I wanted to get into it, was really to help people and to make an impact. So those two things. I mean, I was drawn to the sciences, human biology, which ended up being my major in college. Um, and then being able to like develop relationships with people and to be able to help them and make an impact.
And in high school, what were the biggest things that you think helped you go into the medical field? Is it, like you said, the classes that you took, like biology since freshman year,
Mhm.
or was it other things that you did, like any clubs or any soft skills that you think helped you?
Yes, I think both. Definitely always needed to have decent grades. So getting the background academically with biology and things like that. And then, I mean, medical schools and pretty much anything these days, they want to see that you're well rounded. So having extracurriculars were important too. Um, so I had that both kind of in school, and then I had some extracurriculars with like clubs and sports outside of school as well, and I think both of those kind of helped me develop the skills that I needed, which were helping me with like interpersonal relationships, work ethic, dedication, that kind of thing. So kind of a well balanced, well rounded background.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And for you, what were some of the bigger challenges of throughout your, was it 11 years of schooling?
Yes.
And how did you overcome those challenges that you had?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest ones was actually taking the MCAT, which is the test that you need to get into medical school. And so that was after my 4 years of undergrad and before applying to med school. I took some time while I was studying, I guess, and taking the test at the end, my senior year of college, and didn't do as well as I would have liked to initially on the first test. So I spent some more time just staying back at the university and studying on my own until I was able to take it again, got a little bit better score. After that first test, though, it felt like a big setback because I hadn't really, right out of high school, I've kind of had been going along the track and, was doing pretty well moving forward. And then this test was kind of the first thing that was like, I don't know if I can really go through with this anymore. I don't know if I'll be able to get into med school. And then I was trying to think of other things or other routes I could take. But I knew this is what I wanted to do. So I kind of tried to stick to the plan, studied hard the second time, and it ended up being enough. So that was one of the big hurdles.
I really like that. And what's your favorite part about being a doctor? And also your least favorite part about being a doctor?
Yeah. Favorite part is actually being able to make an impact and help people. And I know that probably sounds cliche, like everybody says they go into medicine to help people, but there are some shifts and some days where I can, have a conversation with a patient maybe after the workup is done and reassure them that their chest pain isn't causing anything life threatening, or that we have some good news and a plan to move forward, and maybe a follow-up visit or something like that. And you can see it kind of in their eyes and their face and how they're talking to you, that they're actually appreciative of what you're doing, and they came to the ER for some answers and maybe for some reassurance, and when you can actually give that to someone, it's a pretty good feeling. So that's probably one of the things I like best. One of the negative aspects of the job is kind of the way the healthcare system works lately, and issues with insurance companies and like reimbursement, and the way that sometimes companies want doctors to practice in order to make money, which I didn't really see as much of going through my training. That was kind of in the background. But now that I'm out practicing on my own, I see a little bit more of it. And it's something I need to be aware of, but I can also separate and remind myself why I went into this, to help people and to make an impact. And I think I'm still doing that despite the challenges that we face these days. So,
I think I really liked your answers. And what are some of your favorite memories or stories about your career that you've had?
um, So lots of memories over the years. Some of the exciting cases, I guess, that come to mind is when I was in training in medical school in Buffalo. I was still a student on a surgery rotation, and I was on trauma surgery, so we get all the trauma cases coming into the hospital. And one of them was a young guy, probably in his 20s, who fell on top of a table saw. So his abdomen had been kind of completely cut open, and he comes in on the gurney from the ambulance, basically holding his intestine in his hands. He was awake and talking and seemed pretty okay, surprisingly, otherwise. But just to see that, especially as like a brand new student, was pretty eye opening, a little bit traumatic. But luckily, he ended up being fine. They took him to the operating room, were able to fix him up. Um, so that's one of the exciting, kind of memorable cases that sticks in my mind.
That's a really cool story. And kind of with that, I remember when I met you a few weeks ago, you were talking about how someone who you had worked with did a show about like the ER, and
Yes.
I remember you were telling me about it, and I wanted to know a little bit more about how accurate are the sort of like the shows online, and are they accurate to kind of what you do every day? Because you also mentioned that that's why you got into wanting to
Yeah.
be work in the ER. So how
Yes.
accurate are those?
So yes, very good question. It depends on the show. Some are more accurate than others. And the show that I think you're referring to is called The Pit, and it's currently on HBO Max. And it takes place at the hospital where I did my residency in Pittsburgh. And one of my co residents at the time, he still works there, and he was the medical consultant for the show. Um, so in that particular case, it's actually very accurate. And I think they used him to kind of develop the cases, like ensure that the medical stuff was accurate in the show. This show particularly is over one shift, so it kind of goes into detail, like what an ER doctor does on a daily basis. And there's still some drama, and there's relationship drama and stuff like that that makes a good show. But this one, it seems to be dedicated more to the medicine and kind of what doctors and nurses and other hospital staff do on a daily basis. So in that case, it's pretty accurate. And I've been talking to a lot of other people who've watched it, and people that I used to work with at that hospital who've watched it. And we kind of all agree that um, it is a pretty good kind of depiction of what we used to do, or what they still do on a daily basis in the hospital. So it's not always all drama. It sometimes is a lot of it, but some of the cases in those shows, like I have seen recently and almost regularly, maybe not all those crazy cases in one shift, but they happen and they're real. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, because I was really curious about how accurate the shows were. Because also, I think a lot with law shows, I tend to hear that they're not very accurate because a lot of law isn't just walking around in a suit and being in court all day. It's a lot of
Exactly.
reading as well. So I was really curious about how in the medical field, especially for the ER shows, how accurate they
Exactly.
were.
Yeah. And a lot of people, even going into ER, I remember I was told, like, it's not all, what you see on TV. It's not all like, intense trauma, or you're doing CPR every day. And so it's right. I mean, it's not like all acute stuff all the time, but it does happen. And sometimes it's actually, I would welcome it to have like a boring shift once in a while where, somebody's not always super sick and dying. But we get the variety, which is kind of what I like about it. So,
Yeah. And so you started back in high school. So you've kind of been through that journey. And if a student was like you and knew they wanted to go into the medical fields or work in the ER, what would be the biggest piece of advice or the steps that you think that they should start taking to be successful going into college and into medical school?
yes. So yeah, kind of like we talked about, academics is important. It's not the only thing that's important, but you do need good grades because medical school is not easy. There's a lot of obviously test taking, memorization, learning skills. So you need the background with grades and the sciences and biology. You can be any major to go into to medical school and medicine, and sometimes it's a good thing to have something different. Like not everybody has to be a biology major, but in my opinion, I think that was most helpful because that's the basis of medicine is human biology. So that was kind of the basis of my training and my major in college. Despite the academics and grades and GPA, like we talked about too, just being a well-rounded, like good person, good student. I mean, I had some other things like sports background and being on a team and whatnot, some leadership roles, which I think also really helped kind of develop me into a good team player, like in the medical field now, and kind of getting there along the way. So it's a combination of things, both academics and the other things that will help you become like a more well-rounded, developed person.
Thank you so much. And so I feel like you kind of emphasized the importance of academics and then just like the difficulty also of getting into medical school.
Mhm.
So if you could give yourself one piece of advice looking back to while you were in college, what would be that piece of advice that you would give yourself?
I would tell myself to stick with it. It was hard at that one point, like I mentioned, especially taking the MCAT, where I had some setbacks and a little bit of doubt. But I would, I can now look back and tell myself at that point that it would all be worth it to keep going. And, once I was able to do that and overcome that hurdle, things got better from there on. I mean, I enjoyed residency, had no issues really getting through that, kind of found my niche and knew that I wanted to do emergency medicine. And then from there on, I'm happy in my career at this point. So yeah, it was not an easy road. But now that I'm here, I can look back on it and say that it was worth it.
Thank you so much. So I think that covers what my main questions, but is there anything else that you would want to share or anything that you think I missed about your career that you would want people to know?
I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it is a long road, but I think it's definitely worth it. And there are a lot of different things you can do in medicine. I mean, I have a specific trajectory that I took. I kind of went straight through. I know a lot of people that kind of took some detours and maybe had a career before medicine or whatnot. And I know a lot of people who went into different fields of medicine, and there are a lot of things you can do these days with like telemedicine, different specialty fields. So this is kind of my journey. There's a lot more that you can do with it in medicine and healthcare. But regardless of what it is, I mean, I'm really happy working in the healthcare field, and I think it's a rewarding field.
Thank you so much. I really liked your answers and especially the message you gave out